How can you make more money? This is the million, or maybe now it's the $1 billion question. I don't know, Megan, you tell me. That so many people are asking. And this week on Live with Laura, I'm super excited to be chatting with Megan Tong, who's going to show us how, or at least give us some guidance on how we can all make some more money and have a better money mindset. So, Megan, welcome. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me. It's so great to be here.
I feel like I'm selfishly doing this for me, but hoping that other people also get something out of this. I think, money mindset is a big challenge for many people. It affects many entrepreneurs that I work with as well. I think we all get wrapped up in these stories, things that we've been brought up with. So, would love to just invite you to share a little bit about how our mindset around money really affects how we interact with money and how that impacts our earnings.
Yeah, totally. Absolutely. So, how we think about money affects the two sides of money. I like to think about money as like there's two levers, right? How making money, so how much we make and we earn, and also saving money and learning how to spend it, learning how to manage it. So, how it affects the making money lever is simply how we think about ourselves, how we think about what we sell as entrepreneurs. And even if you're not an entrepreneur, what you sell when you're an employee is your services. You sell them to your employer, right? So, how we think about ourselves and the value that we provide is ultimately what is going to impact how much we make, right? When we're able to have really confident thoughts about our value in the world and we're able to articulate that and we are able to get out of thinking all about oh my god how I'm feeling right now, and I'm feeling kind of like nervous and I'm feeling like put on the spot and things like that, and we're able to get out of those thoughts and more into like how is this benefiting the other person, how am I contributing to them. The more we're able to shift that, the faster we're able to make money, really. That's the lever of making money.
Yeah. So how do we deal with, I think, we're often brought up with these things that we've probably all heard, like money doesn't grow on trees, that's too expensive, like that this idea of money, in the past I've caught myself, you're going somewhere and it's like, oh, I got that flight on points, or oh, we're using this for that. Like, and we start to like downplay even how much money we spend on things. Something came up for me personally, I'll share this. Um, you know, I'm living abroad right now, working remotely, traveling quite a bit with my family. And somebody said, "What, did you win the lottery or something?" And that's very like, ooh, I don't, like it's so interesting. And it's this relationship with money that I think is where that things like that stem from. So how would you say that we can help manage what other people are projecting onto us, but how we're responding to these stories that we're often brought up with around money.
Yeah, that's a really it, there's lots of parts to that question. I'm so curious to know though, what did you think about that when the person said, "Oh, did you win the lottery or something?" How did you feel? What did you think about that?
Yeah, it was kind of an interesting. Initially it was, I don't know that it was shame, but it was a little bit like maybe indignation. I think it's like, no, I just made this happen. Like that sort of like, we're figuring this out. I'm still working. It's not like I'm on an extended holiday for a year or something. So it brought up a lot of emotions. And I think it was triggering in this idea around money and feeling like you have to hide it, or that there's shame built in, that even if I had won the lottery, or I was making a ton of money and could just go and do all of these things and not have to work, that there was some uh there's some jealousy that brings up. So I think money triggers so many emotions, shame, jealousy, and that in a lot of people.
It really does. Yeah, absolutely. And it's almost like if you're spending in a certain way or you're living in a certain way, it's almost like boom, like get back in the box. Right? Like go
Yeah.
back to like being how everyone else is living their life. And yeah, so it's easy to feel that way, I guess, through comments that people make. And That's something actually that I've thought about a lot. Being someone who wanted to create financial freedom really early, I was like, oh well, what would people think about like if I didn't work anymore? What would people think if I like actually retired and like didn't do anything? Because that's the whole point of having financial freedom. I don't have to do anything if I don't want to, and that's the part that like I think a lot of people do grapple with. And that's what I mean by like so much of money is really a mindset issue. So I think your original question was sort of around like how does mindset affect our spending and our ability to save and invest and things like that. And ultimately, like one question that I get a lot actually in interviews is like, what is the one thing that trips people up? Like, what is the one thought that messes people up around money? Like, is it that they think money doesn't grow on trees, or is it that they think money is scary and overwhelming and like a big math problem? And what I will say after dealing with people for so many years around money, like I was a CPA and then I had my own business and now I've been helping people with their money for 3 years. So I've helped so many different people about their money, is that it really is personal and specific to the person. Yes, there are common themes, but depending on what the symptom is, there's like a whole host of different thought errors, different mindset things that are getting in that person's way. So, what each person really wants to do is they want to think about what is blocking me? What is it that I think money is really hard to make? Is it that I think I need to have a certain amount of money to feel a certain way? Is it that I like, for example, like for people who spend more than say they can be comfortable with, is it that they think they need to buy things to be happy? Is it that they think that they need to buy things to fit in with their friend group? Right. So everybody, I think it's really interesting that we call, finance personal finance. It is personal. It's personal to you. We all have had different experiences that have impacted our lives, how we grew up with money, the ideas that we've been exposed to, our friends. There's so many things that impact how we think about money. But wherever you're challenged specifically, you just want to look at like, okay, what are the thoughts and beliefs that I can question that are getting in my way?
Right.
That's what I was saying. Yeah.
Yeah. I know I felt like that was like I had a multi-part question there. So when you think about some of these, the most common, you know, reasons why people are having, like, what are the most common blocks that you hear?
Yeah, I think what I just alluded to there actually is
Yeah.
probably one of the most common ones. The misconception, really, that a person needs to buy things to make them happy. And all that comes from is just
Mm.
a misunderstanding of what truly makes people happy, right? And like, of course, there is that thing where it's like, obviously, if you don't have a roof over your head, you don't have food on, like basic food on the table. I'm talking like just like to meet your nutritional needs. Then, of course, money is going to like make you happier if you're not eating or you don't have a roof over your head and you're not safe and things like that. But beyond that, right, we have this idea that buying things, or even what we've been fed now, is like, no, it's not things. Like, that's so passe. You don't need nice shoes to like be happy. But what you do need is a trip to Bora Bora, or what you do need is to have a skydiving experience in Byron Bay, because that is what will make you happy. So now it's almost like consumerism, not even with things, which I feel like was maybe like 30 or 40 years ago when, our parents were like, I need to have like this car and I need to have, I don't know, this TV or
Status
whatever, right?
symbols. Yeah.
Status symbols. Now we still have status symbols. They're just experiences. So now we're telling people like, no, it's not the things. It's these like very prized like choice experiences, or like eating out at this like special Michelin star restaurant and things like that. Right. So now we think it's that, but I think we're ready to actually evolve to a new place, a new understanding of like human happiness and fulfillment, and understand what actually creates our happiness and joy, which is not any of these external things, but rather what we're thinking. Right? What we're thinking is going to create joy and happiness, which is exactly why we know that there are people who are sitting on their private jet, maybe, or like they're sitting at this beautiful restaurant with like delicious food, or they've sat down to the meal that their private chef has made them and they're not feeling joy and happiness. Why is that? That's because of what they're thinking in that moment, right? That's creating some other emotion. So ultimately, it is not those things or even those like experiences like skydiving in Byron Bay that are going to create our happiness. It is simply managing our minds and what we are thinking. So that in itself is the whole like is the solution to the problem, and it's one of the biggest solutions to the issue of overspending. Or when I say overspending, I mean spending more than like your own personal finances can handle.
Right.
And when we really 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 understand that it's actually our minds that create our happiness or any feeling that we have, not any of these things or any of these like particular experiences or anything like that, then we really we can gain mastery over our finances, right? We can save as much as we want to save. We can increase our spending. We can decrease our spending. I have actually just had the experience of decreasing my spending. So like this, we've created financial freedom through real estate mostly, but we have all these properties, and as we know, interest rates have gone through the roof. They've increased so much. Our payments on our
Yep.
properties, on all of our properties, have gone up so much. Rents are stable. Rents stay the same. So I'm a landlord. And we were realizing like, oh my gosh, we're like actually burning through so much more than before. And I just looked at our family's spending, and I was just able to bring that down by, 30 or 40%. And know that I am not going to be miserable and unhappy, because what creates my happiness are my thoughts in my mind, not my personal chef, not my clothing.
Right.
Right? So when you
So
really get
do you,
that,
would
you
you
can manage your spending.
yeah, I mean, that's a big to decrease your spending by 30 to 40%. Like, it, would most people realistically be able to make that kind of a change?
Oh my god. Such a great question, because it does sound kind of like,
Because
what?
that got me like, hell no, I'm done.
And I want to say yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Most people can. The people who can't are the people who, like I said, are spending most of their money on basic necessities like,
Right.
food. And when I say food, people think of food as like restaurants and like, I don't know,
No,
buying
you're
like
like,
granola bars. That's not food. Okay. Like that's like all like luxury, right? Like food is like protein and vegetables and a carb kind of thing.
yeah,
So those people, I don't think realistically that they can cut their spending by 30%. They need to pull the lever of making more money. But for most people that like, I interact with, and people who come to coaching, absolutely, they can totally cut their spending by 30 to 40%. Absolutely. Might it requires some larger changes? Yeah, probably. There's
yeah,
probably a lot of people who are overspending on their housing, overspending on like their car, and they are
yeah.
like, no, I can't change that. But that in itself is a thought. Of course you can change that. Of course you can
Mm,
change that, right? So one of my favorite resources that I always recommend to people is a blog called Mr. Money Mustache. It's free. It's on the internet, right? It's a blog. It is so,
okay.
so, so good. It's about this guy. His name is Pete Adney, and he writes just about money and personal finance. But his whole thing was gaining financial freedom as quickly as possible, and he manages to do that on the salary of an engineer, and his wife was also an engineer. He does that in a very short period of time, and he really talks about everything that I'm talking about right now. Not relying on things, not relying on specific experiences to create your happiness, understanding what is luxurious in your life already, because so many things we just take them for granted. We don't even realize how luxurious they are, right? Like if you and your friends always go out for dinner, you might just be like, that's just normal. Doesn't everybody go out for dinner? Like everybody does that, right? But really like thinking about how incredibly luxurious that is. um and he just talks about like how most people can really like probably reduce their spending by half.
Hmm, interesting. So then my next question is tied to that because, how much of this money mindset piece has to do with financial literacy as well? Like how many people are actually financially literate in the way that they can really know what they're spending, understand, all of these aspects of their business, their personal finance, whatever that, whether you're an employee or, an entrepreneur.
Such a good question. At the beginning of my journey, I just wanted to help people with money, right? So I thought it was all financial literacy. I was like, the reason people are doing this is because they don't understand how Excel works. They don't understand how to like add up their money. Like all they need is just a lesson on personal finance. They need to read a couple of books and understand the difference between these savings accounts and these savings accounts and understand basic things. But as I've really delved into this, and the reason why I actually made the shift to mindset coaching was because I realized it is actually not financial literacy. Like I could
Mm.
probably teach somebody what they need to know in a matter of days, probably. Like you don't need to know everything about personal finance. You need to know what's relevant to your situation, right? So, like, I could probably teach that person most of what they would need to do in a matter of days, or they could probably go on the internet and find all the information they needed in a matter of days. Like, if I really sat somebody down and I was like, listen, your mission is to understand everything that you need to understand about personal finance. Like, I'm giving you a week to do that. And, like, that's your mission. At the end of it, I'm going to give you a cruise to the Maldives or whatever. I'm going to give you this amazing prize. They would just sit down and do it. They would just they would just start reading things. They would click on things that led them to other things, right? They would just do it. So then the reason, like if all the information is right there, or they would go to the library and borrow books, right? If all the information is right there, why are people not accessing it? Why are they not deciding that that's what they're going to do at 7 p.m. on a Tuesday night? It's like learn about personal finance.
That's a
That
great question.
is the real question, right? It really is the real question. Like, say somebody's like 25 years old. If you think about all the time that they've had in their life, that's a lot of time. And yet they probably have only dedicated like 3 hours of it to personal finance or something like that. I would say like, I don't know, maybe on average, that's how much people actually delve into this stuff, right? And then we just want to ask ourselves, why? Why isn't that person doing what they need to do to figure out this very important area of their life? Maybe they don't think it's that important. Right? Maybe that's one area, but maybe they're just overwhelmed by it. Maybe they're like, every time I think about money, I just freeze up and I get so scared. Or right, they have other mental blocks that are coming in the way, that are getting in the way of them taking the action of finding the information they need, which is totally readily accessible.
Yeah. So for people watching this, what would be the things for them to look out for that they could start to notice maybe in themselves, like, oh, this is how I respond, or, when you talk about learning about personal finance, this is triggering for me. Like, is there some things that you can, get people to start thinking about in their own life that might be holding them back from learning what they need to learn?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, what I would do if I were them, or what I think everyone can do, is just put a hat of curiosity on and
Mm.
inspect your own behavior and your own thinking, right? So, like, just kind of like bubble out of your own experience and like imagine like an alien is watching you. This is just a really good exercise like for our whole lives, right? And imagine an alien is watching you. They're not familiar with like your thinking or humans in general, right? They would be curious. They'd be like, "Oh, she's doing this thing." And they'd be like, "Why is she doing that thing?" And then like just tell the alien, right? Like tell them like the reason I'm not looking at my finances is because I feel afraid. And then the alien would be like, "Why do you feel afraid?" And then you would just tell the alien like, "I feel afraid because I'm afraid that I'll open it and feel really confused about it, and I'll be made to feel incompetent because I don't know what's going on in there, or I'm afraid that I'll have to make changes in my life because of what I see in there." And just getting really, really, really curious and just explaining to the alien what it is that you're doing and why you're doing it. And And even just writing that down, sometimes when we just like bubble out of ourselves, out of like the thoughts that we're like steeped into, and we can see them on paper or see them from another point of view, that in itself just helps us to overcome them. You're like, oh, okay, this is all I'm thinking. I'm thinking I'm not safe, but I am safe because I'm sitting at my computer. Or like, I'm feeling like I'm confused. Okay, how do I solve my confusion? I start learning, right? Like your
Yeah.
brain will start to like come up with solutions, and it will also start to minimize those things that feel really, really big for you.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess you have to want it as well, right? You have to
Yes.
want, you're right? Like, and that I think there could just be this like, I'm just happy to be oblivious to my financial state.
Totally. Yes. That's such a good point too. You have to want it. You have to want to do it, right? Like, and my thought is if you really, really, really thought about it, everybody would want to. Everybody would want to. Like, who doesn't want to be healthy in their body, right? Like, we know that that's something that makes us happy. Who doesn't want to feel in control of their finances? It's such a big part of our lives, right? So more than just like feeling comfortable, because who wouldn't want to feel comfortable and competent in this like very important area of their lives, but really thinking about like, okay, what is it that I want to do with my money, right? What is my why? For me, I was like working in a cubicle. Well, like this life isn't for me. Like I did not want to be in that cubicle, and I wanted to achieve freedom for myself and like a cube free life. And I saw financial freedom as my way of doing that. So that was just so appealing to me. That was my why for doing the things that I did, for learning the things that I did, for implementing, for overcoming fear, all of those things. For other people, it might be like, I want to be able to send my kids to university. I want to be able to pay for my kids' university. I struggled with student debt. This is not me, but like other people, for example, like some people have struggled with student debt for years, and they just don't want that for their children, right? So everyone needs to come up with their own whys that draw them forward, that allow them to like get through the hard parts, right? Like, do any of us like going to the gym? Do we like sweating and breathing hard and lifting weights? No. Right? But we want the results. Like, I'll be the first to admit it. Like, when I go to the gym, I work fucking hard, and I don't love it, but I do it because I want the results.
Yeah. So how do you define financial freedom? Because I think, that might mean different things to different people. How do you define it?
Yeah, financial freedom is just having enough assets to furnish the lifestyle that you want to have. Um, Basically, that's that's what it is. And just like in terms of the financial literacy part, like the numbers part, is generally defined as like you have assets that are worth a certain amount of money, and if you drew them down at 4%, or like assuming you made a 4% interest on that, that you could live on that 4%. So, for example, if your life costs you like $40,000 to make it really, really easy. You know that your life costs you $40,000, then you would need to have $1 million in assets, $1 million saved to be able to do that. So that's what I define as financial freedom. When your assets are enough to, at 4%, provide enough money for the life that you want. So there's two sides of that equation, right? There's like the side of saving money and investing it and all that. But then there's also the side of like, how much does your life actually cost you? The more your life costs you, if you have a lifestyle that costs
Yeah,
$300,000, it's going to need a lot more assets to make that possible for yourself.
right. Exactly. So just before we wrap this up, I would love, I wanted to just ask you this one final question around this idea of, how to make more money. And I think a lot of people feel like, money is like there's only a certain amount I can make. They hit those barriers. And maybe you could just share an example or like a tip on like how that money mindset can really help people make more money.
Yeah. Okay. how can you make more money by using your mind, right? What helps us get into action around making money? Well, first of all, like you might want to hypothesize what are the actions that I need to take to make more money, right? If you're a business owner, maybe it's like you need to like do more marketing. Maybe you need to get in front of people more, right? So you want to ask yourself, like, what are, if you're an employee, maybe it's, I need to go ask for a raise. Maybe it's, I need to invest in myself so I can like have these skills and make a move or, position my value better so that I can have this bigger raise, et cetera, right? So you might want to hypothesize what are the actions that you need to take to achieve that. Most of us really like if we put all our mind drama aside and we just like get to work, we have an idea of what we need to do. We're not like, oh, I have no idea how to do that. Like we have an idea of the actions that are going to get us there, right? And then
Right.
looking at like what is either in the way of that or what would I need to actually feel to get into action around those things? How would I need to feel to go and ask for that raise? Like maybe I would need to feel confident, maybe I would need to feel grounded, maybe I would need to feel determined, like determined that even if I feel like barfing, I'm still going to have that conversation, right? Like what is the feeling that you need to have to take those actions and to take them effectively? And then ask yourself, like, what am I going to think to myself on purpose? This is a big theme of today, thinking on purpose, right?
Yeah.
What am I going to think to myself on purpose? Not what crappy thoughts is my mind just producing, but what am I going to think to myself on purpose that's going to create that feeling of being determined? Then I'm going to go and ask for that raise or write that email or go and meet that person, right? What am I going to think? Maybe it's, I'm the best employee out here, or like I'm very, very competent, or like it's whatever is going to work for you. Or maybe if you want to feel determined, it's just like I know exactly what I need to do and I know exactly how to do it. Right. So
Yeah.
you just want to look at what is going to put you inside of that space and inside of that emotional space. It's going to be a thought that serves you. If any of those thoughts that I just proposed work, use them, get into the emotional state, and then take the actions that you know to take. And don't tell yourself you don't know what to do because everybody knows what to do.
Mm, I love that. That feels like such a great thing to end that on. I want to go back and watch this because I feel like you had so many valuable tips and really going back to that emotional state and that I love that the analogy of, answering the alien about, what's why, answering why. So I think there's some really amazing takeaways for everyone who's watching. If you're watching the replay, Megan, how can people find you? What is the best way they can connect with you or work with you?
Yeah, the best way that people can find me is on Instagram. That's what I use the most. I'm at Coach Megan Tong on Instagram, and my website is coachmegantong.com. So if you're looking for a life coach, a money mindset coach, you want to make more money, manage your money better, you can go to my website and we can start coaching together.
Amazing. Thanks for being here today, Megan. It was a great conversation. And thanks for everyone who joined us.
Thank you so much for
Bye,
having me.
everybody.
Bye.